The scorching afternoon sun beat down on Rodeo Drive, turning the asphalt into a shimmering mirror of heat. A silver Aston Martin 177, worth $3.5 million, sat dead in the middle of the street, its engine silent as a tomb. Richard Sterling slammed his fist against the steering wheel, his face crimson with rage. Fucking piece of British shit! Marcus Johnson, a homeless black man, rose slowly from beneath a nearby tree and walked toward the car. "I can fix it," he said quietly. Sterling whirled around, his blue eyes blazing with contempt. "Get your dirty black hands away from my car. I don't need help from a fucking N." "R!" Marcus stood perfectly still, as the crowd gasped in horror. "I can still fix it," Marcus replied, his voice steady as stone. Have you ever witnessed the moment when racial hatred collides with hidden truth? This isn't just a story about a broken car, it's about a 10-year secret about to detonate. Marcus Johnson was 35 years old, though the streets had aged him beyond his years. His 6'2" frame, once powerful from years of athletic training, had grown gaunt from irregular meals and restless nights. His hair and beard had grown wild and unkempt, a chaotic mass of black and premature gray that hadn't seen scissors in months. His dark brown eyes held depths that shifted between vacant emptiness and razor-sharp intelligence, as if two different souls inhabited the same body. The torn t-shirt he wore had long ago lost its original color, now existing as a canvas of stains, oil, dirt, sweat, and substances unknown. His jeans were held together by patches upon patches, a tapestry of different fabrics that told the story of years on the streets. His worn Converse shoes had holes that revealed calloused feet beneath, the rubber soles worn so thin that he could feel every pebble through them. The old military backpack slung over his shoulder contained his entire world, a set of snap-on tools he'd owned for 15 years, and a water-damaged photograph of a family that no longer existed. 10 years ago, Marcus had been a different man entirely. A mechanical engineering prodigy who graduated from MIT at 21, summa cum laude with a perfect GPA, he'd landed his dream job at Mercedes-AMG, designing engines that would revolutionize the automotive industry. His first project, a V12 engine that increased efficiency by 40% while doubling power output, had earned him industry-wide recognition before his 25th birthday. He'd met Sarah at a Boston coffee shop on a rainy Tuesday afternoon. She was a pediatric nurse with a smile that could light up the darkest room and a laugh that made him believe in forever. She was reading a medical journal, and he was sketching engine designs on a napkin. When she asked what he was drawing, he spent 3 hours explaining automotive thermodynamics, and somehow, miraculously, she stayed interested the entire time. They married within a year in a small ceremony in her parents' backyard, surrounded by friends who said they'd never seen two people more in love. Their home in suburban Detroit was modest but perfect. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, a garage where Marcus could tinker, and a backyard where Sarah planted roses. Lily came first, born during a snowstorm that shut down the city for 3 days. 5 years old at the time of her death, she had her father's brilliant mind and her mother's compassionate heart. She could solve math problems that stumped second graders and spent her weekends helping her mother make sandwiches for the homeless shelter. She wanted to be a doctor, just like Mommy helped sick children, but also an inventor like Daddy. She carried a small notebook everywhere, filling it with drawings of invention ideas that ranged from flying cars to machines that could make vegetables taste like ice cream. James followed 2 years later, 3 years old when he died, a bundle of endless energy who could name every car brand by the time he was 2. He would sit in Marcus's lap for hours, watching his father work on engine designs, occasionally pointing at components and asking, "What dat, Daddy?" in his sweet toddler voice. The 15th of March, 2014. The date was burned into Marcus's brain like a brand. It had started as a perfect morning. Sarah had made pancakes shaped like Mickey Mouse. Lily had successfully tied her shoes by herself for the first time, and James had managed to eat breakfast without getting syrup in his hair, a minor miracle. Marcus had kissed them all goodbye at 8:30 a.m., Sarah loading the kids into their silver Honda Civic for the morning school run, Lily to kindergarten at Riverside Elementary, James to Little Explorers Daycare. At 8:47 a.m., Richard Sterling Jr., 18 years old and drunk despite the early hour, ran a red light in his Lamborghini Huracan, doing 120 miles per hour through a residential zone. He'd been racing with friends, trying to prove something that would never matter to anyone. The impact was catastrophic. The Lamborghini hit the driver's side of the Civic at full speed, sending the smaller car spinning through the air before it crashed into a concrete barrier. Sarah and the children died instantly, a small mercy in an ocean of tragedy. Marcus had been in a meeting about a new hybrid engine design when his phone rang. The voice on the other end spoke words that didn't make sense, couldn't make sense. He'd literally run 15 miles to the crash site, his dress shoes shredding against the pavement, his suit jacket abandoned somewhere along the way. He arrived to find his entire world reduced to twisted metal and silence. The police had to physically restrain him from climbing into the wreckage. He held Lily's pink backpack thrown clear in the crash and screamed until his voice gave out. Sterling Jr. was released on bail within 2 hours. His father's legal team, 50 lawyers strong from 3 different firms, descended like vultures on the justice system. The judge who would oversee the case, Harold Montgomery, had recently received a $5 million campaign donation from Sterling Industries, a fact that somehow never made it into the conflict of interest discussions. The trial was a masterpiece of legal manipulation. Evidence disappear. Witnesses suddenly couldn't remember crucial details. The toxicology report that showed Sterling Jr.'s blood alcohol at 3 times the legal limit was ruled inadmissible due to a chain of custody error. Security footage from 3 different cameras mysteriously corrupted. Sterling Jr.'s own confession, made in the back of the police car, was thrown out because the officers had failed to properly Mirandize him despite video evidence to the contrary. Sterling Jr. walked free after a trial that lasted 6 days. When Marcus tried to pursue a civil case, he was countersued for defamation, harassment, and intentional infliction of emotional distress. Richard Sterling himself had sat Marcus down in a room with no windows and explained, very calmly, that if Marcus didn't drop everything immediately, he would be destroyed. "I own judges, police commissioners, congressmen," Sterling had said. "I can make you disappear. Or worse, I can make you wish you'd disappeared. Take the hint, boy. Your family is already gone. Don't make me take everything else." Marcus didn't take the hint. He fought for 2 more years, spending every penny of his savings, taking out loans, selling everything he owned. Mercedes-AMG, not wanting the publicity of an employee involved in a high-profile case against one of their biggest clients, quietly let him go with a severance package that included a brutal non-disclosure agreement. By the end, Marcus had lost everything: his job, his home, his savings, his credit, his reputation, and finally, his sanity. The breaking point came on what would have been Lily's 7th birthday. Marcus had been living in his car for 3 months, parked outside the cemetery where his family was buried. He'd bought a small cake with his last $20 and was singing happy birthday to a photograph when something inside him simply snapped. He began having conversations with Sarah, full conversations where he could hear her responses. He could see Lily sitting in the passenger seat, telling him about her day at school. James would appear in the rearview mirror, holding up toy cars for Daddy to see. For the first year on the streets, he didn't speak to living people at all. He would sit for hours having elaborate discussions with his dead family, reaching out to touch faces that weren't there, pushing empty swings at playgrounds while Lily's ghost laughed with delight. Other homeless people called him the ghost mechanic because he would appear at night to fix broken shopping carts, bicycles, and cars, then vanish before dawn. He never asked for payment, never stayed for thanks. He would work in absolute silence except for his occasional whispers to the air beside him. "Hand me that wrench, James." "No, sweetie. That's the wrong size." "Sarah, can you hold the light?" But even in his fractured state, his genius remained. In moments of clarity that came like breaks in storm clouds, he would sketch engine designs on cardboard with charcoal from burned wood. These weren't random scrawlings of a broken mind, they were revolutionary concepts that would change the automotive industry forever. In 2016, during a particularly lucid period that lasted 3 weeks, he developed a revolutionary hybrid system while living in an abandoned warehouse. Using a stolen laptop from a public library and connecting to Wi-Fi from a nearby Starbucks, he created blueprints for an engine that could run on both hydrogen and electricity with 0 emissions and double the efficiency of anything currently on the market. He sent the blueprints to Toyota under the pseudonym LJ. Memorial Lily and James Memorial. The package included a simple note: "For a better world they'll never see." Toyota's engineers were stunned. The design was so advanced that they initially thought it was a hoax. When they built a prototype and it worked exactly as specified, they tried desperately to find the designer. The patent was filed under the mysterious name, and payment of $1.2 billion was deposited into a Swiss account that Marcus had set up during his MIT days and forgotten about until that moment of clarity. In 2018, still living on the streets of Los Angeles, sleeping behind a dumpster in an alley off Sunset Boulevard, he saved Tesla from bankruptcy with an electric motor design that Elon Musk would later call the work of a genius so profound it borders on prophetic. Marcus had drawn the initial design in the dust on the back windshield of a Tesla Model S, photographed it with a discarded phone he'd repaired, and sent it to Tesla's engineering department with the subject line, "You're welcome." The motor design increased range by 60% while reducing weight by 40%. Tesla paid $800 million for the design, desperately trying to locate the inventor. The money went into the same Swiss account, untouched. By 2024, Marcus had accumulated $4.8 billion in various accounts, all untouched, all waiting. He wasn't saving it for himself. He wasn't even sure what he was saving it for. He just knew that somewhere, somehow, there would come a moment when all of this, the pain, the genius, the money, the patient's suffering, would coalesce into something meaningful. He lived as a homeless man not because he had to, but because he needed to remember. The pain kept him sharp. The humiliation kept him focused. The constant reminder of loss kept his purpose clear. Richard Sterling stood beside his dead Aston Martin like a king surveying a failed kingdom. At 35, he had inherited an empire built on blood and brutality, though he preferred to think of it as aggressive business acumen and traditional values. Sterling Industries, valued at $40 billion, had been passed down from father to son for 5 generations, each one adding new layers of corruption to the foundation. The first Sterling had made his fortune in cotton and tobacco, which was a polite way of saying he'd owned 300 slaves. The second had been a railroad baron who'd worked Chinese immigrants to death building tracks through mountains. The third had been a war profiteer, selling defective equipment to the army during World War II. The fourth, Richard's father, had modernized the operation real estate built on red-lined neighborhoods, private prisons filled with minorities arrested for minor offenses, and pharmaceutical companies that price-gouged insulin to diabetics. Richard himself had taken the family business into the 21st century. Cryptocurrency laundering, offshore tax havens, and a network of political connections that ran from local city councils all the way to the Senate. His blonde hair was slicked back with product that cost $800 an ounce, styled each morning by a personal barber who came to his house at 5 a.m. His blue eyes, which he'd once heard a girlfriend describe as soulless, were the pale color of winter ice. The Tom Ford suit he wore, despite the 90-degree heat, was a $15,000 statement that he was above such mundane concerns as weather or comfort. The fabric was a blend of vicuña wool and silk, so fine that it felt like wearing a cloud, if clouds cost more than most people's cars. His Patek Philippe watch, a $2 million testament to excess, was one of only 3 in existence, the other 2 owned by a Saudi prince and a Russian oligarch, respectively. Richard had been 25 when his son killed the Johnson family. Fresh out of Harvard Business School with an MBA he'd earned through a combination of family donations and professors who understood the value of Sterling connections. He remembered the call vividly, not because of the deaths, but because of the inconvenience. He'd been in the middle of closing a deal to demolish a historic black neighborhood to build luxury condos. 3 less RS to worry about, he'd actually said to his lawyer, Thomas Whitman, though he'd been careful to ensure the room wasn't bugged. The cover-up had cost him $15 million in bribes and hush money, but it had been worth it to protect the Sterling name and, more importantly, to protect the Sterling legacy. He'd personally threatened Marcus Johnson in a meeting that officially never happened. "Your wife and kids are already dead," he'd said, leaning back in his chair like he was discussing the weather. "Do you really want to join them? Because I can make that happen. I can make you disappear so thoroughly that people will forget you ever existed. Or, and this is my preferred option, I can destroy you slowly. Every job you apply for, rejected. Every loan, denied. Every friend, turned against you. I'll leave you alive but wishing you weren't. Your choice, boy." When Marcus hadn't backed down immediately, Richard had made good on his threats. A few phone calls to the right people and Marcus Johnson became unemployable in the automotive industry. His credit was destroyed through fraudulent reports. His bank accounts were frozen on suspicion of money laundering charges that would eventually be dropped, but not before the damage was done. Richard had watched Marcus's descent into homelessness with the same satisfaction most people got from watching a rival sports team lose. It was vindication, proof that the Sterling name meant something, that there were still consequences for those who didn't know their place. Now, 10 years later, Richard didn't recognize the broken man approaching his car. The years had transformed Marcus from a clean-cut engineer into something Richard's mind automatically categorized as refuse human waste to be swept away by the police he generously funded. Sterling Jr., now 28, was living in Switzerland on a $100,000 monthly allowance, safely beyond the reach of American law. He'd developed a cocaine habit that cost nearly as much as his allowance, and spent his days racing cars and assaulting women who were paid handsomely to not press charges. Richard visited him twice a year, usually combining the trips with meetings at Swiss banks where he kept the majority of his liquid assets. Richard had 47 luxury cars, each one a trophy representing a business rival destroyed or a neighborhood gentrified. His Aston Martin 177 was his favorite, not because of its performance or beauty, but because he'd bought it with the insurance payout from a suspicious fire at a low-income housing complex he'd wanted demolished. 5 estates spread across the country, each one staffed by underpaid immigrants who weren't in a position to complain about working conditions. 3 yachts, named Superiority, Supremacy, and Sovereignty, moored in international waters to avoid taxes. He had a black book of connections that included 3 Supreme Court justices, 15 senators, 48 congressmen, and hundreds of state and local officials. He donated $20 million annually to police departments across the country, ensuring special treatment wherever he went. The donations came with implicit strings aggressive policing in minority neighborhoods, looking the other way when Sterling Industries violated labor laws, and personal protection that bordered on a private army. He was a member of several exclusive clubs that didn't officially have racial requirements but somehow had never admitted a black member in their 100-year histories. Behind closed doors, in rooms swept for bugs daily, he attended meetings of a group that called itself the Heritage Foundation, not the think tank, but a collection of wealthy white supremacists who believed they were fighting a war for the future of America. Today, he was on his way to a meeting that would launder another $500 million through a complex web of cryptocurrency exchanges and shell companies. The money came from various sources: opioids sold to desperate communities, wages stolen from undocumented workers, government contracts for services never rendered. It would eventually end up in Switzerland, clean and untraceable, ready to be deployed for whatever purpose Sterling deemed worthy. Then his car had died. Marcus had been watching from beneath the tree for exactly 23 minutes before the Aston Martin expired. He'd been in that spot since dawn, knowing from intercepted emails Sterling's assistant had been feeding him information for 3 years, exactly when Richard would be driving down Rodeo Drive. He'd heard the subtle change in the engine note from 50 feet away, the almost imperceptible stutter that preceded catastrophic fuel system failure. It was a design flaw specific to this model. The number 3 fuel injector would clog when the pressure reached exactly 2,000 bar, a problem that affected maybe 1 in 10,000 vehicles. Marcus knew this because he'd diagnosed the issue in a technical journal he'd read at the public library 6 months ago, but also because he'd paid a mechanic to introduce a specific harmless compound into Sterling's fuel tank the night before, ensuring the failure would happen precisely here, precisely now. He also knew who Richard Sterling was. He'd known the moment the man stepped out of the car, the same way a deer knows the scent of the wolf that killed its family. Every detail was burned into his memory: the way Sterling walked with an arrogant swagger, the way he held his phone like a weapon, the way his face twisted with disgust at anything he deemed beneath him. Marcus had spent 10 years studying this man, learning his habits, his weaknesses, his crimes. He knew about the mistresses, the bribes, the murders beyond his own family. He knew about the secret meetings, the offshore accounts, the plans to run for president in 2028. He knew everything, and he'd been waiting for exactly the right moment to deploy that knowledge. "The fuel injector is clogged," Marcus said, his voice hoarse from disuse but clear enough to be heard. "Number 3 specifically. It's a pressure issue at 2,000 bar. If you don't fix it soon, the built-up pressure could cause an explosion." He kept his tone neutral, helpful even, playing the part of the harmless homeless man, trying to be useful. Richard's reaction was immediate and visceral, his face contorted with disgust as if he'd stepped in something foul. The transformation was remarkable, from frustrated annoyance to pure hatred in less than a second. "Don't you dare come near my car with those diseased hands." He took a step back as if Marcus's poverty might be contagious. "This car is worth more than your entire worthless bloodline. You probably have AIDS, drugs, lice, and every disease known to man." Marcus stood perfectly still, his hands at his sides, non-threatening. Inside, his heart was racing not with fear but with anticipation. 10 years of planning had led to this moment. In his mind, he heard Lily's voice, sweet and clear as it had been on her last morning. "Daddy, be patient. Let him show everyone who he really island." He kept his expression neutral, almost vacant, playing the part of the broken man everyone expected to see. Richard pulled out his phone, an iPhone that cost more than most people's rent, his fingers jabbing at the screen with violent intensity. "Security! Police! There's a dangerous black man threatening me. He's probably high on crack, might be armed." His voice carried across the street, deliberately loud, ensuring everyone would hear. "This is Richard Sterling. Yes, the Richard Sterling. I need immediate assistance." The crowd began to gather like iron filings to a magnet, drawn by the spectacle of conflict and the promise of drama. Within minutes, 30 people had stopped to watch, their plans forgotten in favor of this unexpected entertainment. 20 phones were recording, held up like modern talismans to capture and share the moment. Ashley Kim, a social media influencer with 3 million followers, started live streaming immediately. She was a 22-year-old Korean-American who'd built her following on lifestyle content, but she recognized viral gold when she saw it. "Oh my God, guys, you're not going to believe this. Racist billionaire alert on Rodeo Drive. This is insane." Her voice carried the perfect mix of outrage and excitement that would keep viewers glued to their screens. The viewer count climbed rapidly, 1,000, 5,000, 10,000 in the first minute. Comments flooded in faster than anyone could read them. "Is this real? Call the cops on him. Typical rich white guy. That poor man just tried to help." Tourists from Japan, Korea, and China began taking photos, their expensive cameras clicking in rapid succession. A group of German tourists started filming while providing running commentary in their language. Employees from Gucci, Prada, and Louis Vuitton stepped out of their stores, drawn by the commotion. They stood in their designer uniforms, whispering among themselves, unsure whether to intervene or simply watch. The Rodeo Drive security, 2 guards in their 50s who were more used to dealing with shoplifters than racial incidents, approached hesitantly. They recognized Sterling, everyone did, and knew that crossing him could mean losing their jobs. "You people are all witnesses," Richard shouted, playing to the crowd like a prosecutor presenting to a jury. "This N.R. is harassing me. He's trying to steal my car. Look at him, he's probably casing it, figuring out how to break in." He gestured wildly, his performance growing more theatrical with each word. "This is what happens when we don't enforce vagrancy laws. These people think they can just approach anyone, anytime." He reached into his wallet, a Hermes piece made from albino crocodile leather that cost $40,000, and pulled out thick stacks of $100 bills. The money was crisp and new, fresh from the bank that morning. "Here's what you really want, isn't it?" He began counting it out loud, making sure everyone could see. 10,000. 20,000, 50,000, $100,000. He held the money up like a trophy. "This is more than your kind sees in a lifetime." With deliberate cruelty, he began throwing the bills at Marcus, not handing them over but throwing them like trash. The money fluttered in the hot breeze, some bills catching updrafts and sailing over the crowd. "Take it and disappear. Go buy your crack, your meth, your heroin, whatever it is you people use to forget your worthless lives." Some bills landed on Marcus's shoulders, others at his feet. "Better yet, use it to buy a one-way ticket back to Africa. Make America clean again." Marcus didn't move. He stood perfectly still, his eyes never leaving Richard's face. The money lay scattered around him like fallen leaves in autumn, untouched and unwanted. In his mind, he heard Sarah's voice, gentle but firm. "Don't give in to anger, baby. That's what he wants. Let him hang himself with his own rope." His hands clenched into fists, his fingernails digging crescents into his palms hard enough to draw blood, but he remained silent and still. "This is what's wrong with America," Richard continued, his voice rising to ensure everyone could hear, feeding off the attention like a vampire feeds on blood. "We let these animals run free. They contribute nothing but crime and disease. They're parasites on the body of our great nation." He was in full performance mode now, playing to his imagined bass. "My grandfather had the right idea with the KKK. At least when we owned them, they were useful. They picked cotton, they built railroads, they knew their place." The crowd's reaction was immediate and visceral. Gasps of shock, cries of outrage, people shouting, "That's enough, and you can't say that." But Richard was beyond stopping. drunk on his own perceived power and the certainty that money made him untouchable. Should have picked our own cotton. Would have saved us centuries of trouble. Now look where political correctness has gotten us. They think they're equal. They demand rights. They want reparations for being given the opportunity to live in the greatest country on earth. An elderly black woman in the crowd began to cry, her hands shaking as she recorded. "Lord have mercy," she whispered. In 2024, still dealing with this, a young white couple tried to intervene. "Sir, that's enough. You're being recorded. This is going to..." Richard turned on them with a snarl. "Going to what? Hurt my reputation? I own half this city. I decide what gets reported and what doesn't." Marcus began to speak, so quietly at first that only those closest could hear. He was reciting technical specifications, his voice gaining strength with each detail, like a prayer or an incantation. V12 Cosworth engine, 7.312 liters displacement, 750 brake horsepower at 7,500 RPM, 750 Newton-meters of torque. Dry sump lubrication system, carbon fiber monocoque chassis weighing just 1,500 kilograms. Inboard pushrod suspension front and rear. Carbon ceramic brake discs, 398mm front, 360mm rear. 6-speed automated sequential manual transmission, 0 to 60 in 3.5 seconds. Top speed of 220 miles per hour. People started to murmur, confused and intrigued. How did a homeless man know these details so precisely? These weren't facts you could Google easily. These were the kind of specifications that only engineers and serious collectors knew. A man in an expensive suit, clearly a car enthusiast, whispered to his companion, "Those numbers are exactly right. How could he possibly know that?" Richard heard the murmuring and felt the crowd's attention shifting. He couldn't have that. "Listen to him," he laughed, harsh and mocking. "The monkey thinks he's a mechanic. Probably memorized it from a magazine he found in the trash. This is what happens when they get ideas above their station. They think memorizing a few facts makes them intelligent." The wail of sirens announced the arrival of the Beverly Hills Police Department. 3 patrol cars screeched to a halt, their lights painting red and blue shadows across the storefronts. 6 officers emerged with the practiced efficiency of a SWAT team responding to an active shooter, hands already on their weapons. Captain Hayes, a thick-necked man in his 50s who looked like an ex-football player gone to seed, approached with a swagger that suggested the outcome was already decided. His gray hair was cut military short, his face weathered from years of golf with people like Sterling. "Dick, my man, what's the emergency here?" Hayes's voice was jovial, as if they were meeting at the country club rather than a potential crime scene. The familiarity in his tone made several people in the crowd exchange glances. Richard pointed at Marcus with theatrical outrage, his finger stabbing the air like a weapon. "This fucking N.R. won't leave me alone. He's threatening me, trying to steal my car. He's probably high on drugs, look at him. I want him arrested immediately for attempted grand theft auto." Hayes didn't hesitate. His hand went to his service weapon, a Glock 19 that he unholstered with practiced ease. The sound of the weapon clearing leather was audible even over the murmur of the crowd. "Sir, step away from the vehicle immediately. Hands where I can see them." The other officers followed suit, 4 more weapons drawn and aimed at an unarmed man who hadn't moved an inch. Officer Rodriguez, a Latino cop in his 20s with kind eyes and only 3 years on the force, shifted uncomfortably. Officer Washington, a young black cop on his 2nd week of patrol, looked sick to his stomach but remained silent, knowing that speaking up could end his career before it began. "Officer," Marcus said calmly, his voice cutting through the tension like a blade through silk, "that car is going to explode if the fuel system isn't repaired. The high-pressure line is compromised. 2,000 bar of pressure with nowhere to go. One spark and this entire block could go up in flames." Hayes laughed, a harsh bark that contained no humor. "Listen to this crackhead. Thinks he's some kind of mechanic, probably planning to steal parts while pretending to fix it." He took a step closer to Marcus, his weapon still drawn. "Get on the ground face down now. I won't ask again." "Captain, he hasn't actually done anything," Officer Rodriguez started to say, his voice uncertain but concerned. "Shut your mouth, Rodriguez, or you'll be writing parking tickets for the rest of your career," Hayes snapped, not taking his eyes off Marcus. "Maybe meter maid is more your speed anyway." Should have known better than to trust, He caught himself before the slur, but everyone knew what he'd been about to say. Officer Washington, the young black cop, found his voice despite his fear. "Sir, this isn't right. He hasn't committed any crime. He offered to help. One more word, Washington, and you're both suspended without pay. Want to join him in lockup? Because that can be arranged. Hayes's face was red with anger now, veins bulging in his neck. Ashley Kim's live stream had exploded beyond anything she'd ever experienced. 800,000 viewers were watching in real time, the chat scrolling so fast it was impossible to read. Racist billionaire wants cops to shoot unarmed black man, she narrated, her voice shaking with genuine emotion. This is happening right now, guys. Right now on Rodeo Drive. The police have guns drawn on a man who just offered to help. The hashtags were already trending globally within minutes. Number rodeo racist, number Black Lives Matter, number police brutality, number justice for Marcus. Comments flooded in from around the world in dozens of languages, expressions of outrage, disbelief, and rage. This is America. George Floyd all over again. Someone stop this. Where's the justice? Rich white man uses cops as personal army. CNN, Fox News, Mississippi, NBC, and BBC all interrupted their regular programming with breaking news, racial incident on Rodeo Drive. News helicopters began circling overhead, their cameras capturing every moment from above. The sound of their rotors added to the chaos, creating a war zone atmosphere in what was usually a shopping paradise for the wealthy. Richard had completely lost control of himself, his mask of civility shattered beyond repair. The audience, the cameras, the attention it had all combined to strip away whatever thin veneer of civilization he usually maintained. Just shoot him if he doesn't comply. He screamed, spittle flying from his mouth. This is why we need to make America white again. These fucking monkeys think they own everything now. He was pacing now, gesticulating wildly, playing to an imaginary crowd of supporters. My family built this country. We civilized it. We took it from savages and made it great. And now look, they want to tear down our statues, erase our history, replace us. He pointed at Marcus again. This is the future they want, where criminals and parasites have more rights than law-abiding citizens. My grandfather was right, Richard continued, his voice reaching a crescendo. The KKK had the right idea. They understood that some people are just genetically inferior. It's not racism, it's science. Look at the bell curve. Look at crime statistics. These people are predisposed to violence and stupidity. The crowd was now shouting back, some in anger, some in shock, many in tears. A young black mother covered her daughter's ears and hurried away. An elderly Jewish man who'd survived the Holocaust stood frozen, his face pale with recognition of the hatred he'd heard before. But Richard wasn't done. Ship them all back to Africa in cages where they belong. Let them eat each other like the animals they are. America is for Americans, real Americans, white Americans. The rest are just guests who've overstayed their welcome. Something shifted in Marcus then. Slowly, as if his joints were rusted from disuse, he knelt down and picked up a single $100 bill. Tears began to flow down his cheeks, dropping onto the asphalt in dark spots that evaporated immediately in the heat. Sarah, he whispered, his voice breaking. Baby, I'm sorry. I failed you. I couldn't protect you. His body shook with suppressed sobs. Lily, Princess Daddy couldn't keep you safe. You were wearing your pink dress with the butterflies. You were so excited about show and tell. His voice grew quieter, more broken. James, my boy, Daddy's so sorry. You still had your Lightning McQueen car in your hand. You never let it go. Richard laughed triumphantly, pointing at Marcus like a circus ringmaster presenting a performing animal. Look at him. The ape is finally breaking, talking to his crack hallucinations. This is what drugs do to their already inferior brains, probably hearing voices telling him to kill white people. This is why they're dangerous. That's when Marcus's phone began to ring. The ringtone was jarringly official, not music, but a sharp electronic pulse that demanded attention. The screen lit up, visible to anyone close enough to see. Department of Justice urgent. Below that, a cascade of missed call notifications began scrolling. 70, 3-inch total, FBI, Toyota Corporation, Tesla, the White House, Pentagon, Swiss Bank International, Mercedes-Benz Global, Ferrari International. Each name appeared for just a second before being replaced by another. Ashley Kim zoomed her camera in on the screen, her voice rising in shock. What the fuck? Why is the Department of Justice calling a homeless man? The White House? Toyota? Her viewers were going insane in the chat. Who is this man? This is bigger than we thought. Something's about to happen. The viewer count hit 2 million and kept climbing. Richard saw the screen, too. The blood drained from his face so quickly that for a moment he looked like he might faint. His eyes widened in recognition and then horror. "Johnson," he whispered, the word barely audible, then louder with growing panic. "Marcus Johnson, the one whose family—" His voice cut off as if someone had wrapped a hand around his throat. The convoy appeared as if from nowhere, though they'd been positioned just out of sight for the past hour. 15 black SUVs surrounded the entire intersection in a choreographed maneuver that took less than 30 seconds. FBI agents in full tactical gear poured out, weapons drawn but not aimed at Marcus. They moved with military precision, creating a perimeter that included everyone present. Elena Rodriguez, a federal prosecutor in her 40s, with sharp eyes and an even sharper mind, stepped out of the lead vehicle. She wore a bulletproof vest over her suit, and her badge was displayed prominently. Her voice carried the authority of the United States government and 10 years of preparation. "Richard Sterling! Freeze! Don't move a muscle!" She turned to Hayes, whose weapon was still pointed at Marcus. "Captain Hayes, lower your weapon immediately, or face federal charges for obstruction of justice and conspiracy." Then, more gently, "Dr. Johnson? Dr. Marcus Johnson? Are you all right? We've been monitoring. We're here now." Marcus looked up, tears still streaming down his face. 10 years, Elena. Has it been long enough? Can we do this now?" Elena nodded grimly. "Sterling Jr. confessed everything from Switzerland 6 hours ago. We have it all." The crowd, the police, even the helicopters seemed to freeze in that moment. Richard Sterling's legs gave out, and he collapsed to his knees on the hot asphalt. "No," he gasped. "This can't be. You're supposed to be dead. We destroyed you." Marcus slowly stood up, and as he did, something remarkable happened. The broken, homeless man evaporated like morning mist, replaced by someone entirely different. His posture straightened, his eyes cleared, and when he spoke, his voice was no longer hoarse, but clear and resonant with controlled fury. "Hello, Richard. Surprised to see me? 10 years ago, you ordered your son to murder my family." Each word was precisely enunciated, carrying the weight of a decade's worth of pain and planning. Sarah Johnson, 28 years old, pediatric nurse at Detroit General Hospital. She'd just gotten a promotion to head nurse of the children's cancer ward. Lily Johnson, 5 years old, kindergarten student at Riverside Elementary. She was going to show her class the solar system model we'd built together. James Johnson, 3 years old, who knew every car brand before he could write his name. He was wearing his favorite Lightning McQueen shirt that morning. Marcus reached into his backpack and pulled out a sophisticated recording device, no bigger than a cell phone but covered in tiny lights and buttons. "For 8 years, I've been recording every conversation you've had, every phone call, every meeting, every whispered conspiracy in rooms you thought were secure." He pulled out a second device, then a third. Multiple redundancy. Everything backed up to servers in 12 countries. He handed a USB drive to Elena. 500 terabytes of evidence, including the video from the 15th of December, 2013, 3 months before the murder, where you told your son, and I quote, that N.R. Marcus Johnson is getting too successful. He's making us look bad. If these people start thinking they can compete with us, where does it end? Kill that uppity N.R.'s. Whole family. Make it look like a drunk driving accident. I don't care if you have to ram them off the road. 3 less monkeys to worry about. Make sure the little ones are in the car. Trauma sells the accident story better. Elena pulled out an iPad and connected it to a portable speaker system that FBI agents quickly set up. The crowd fell silent as Sterling Jr.'s voice, broken and sobbing, filled the air. The video showed him in what appeared to be a Swiss federal police station, his face gaunt from guilt and years of drug abuse. His hands shook as he spoke, and his eyes had the hollow look of someone who'd been haunted for a decade. "My father made me do it," Sterling Jr. was saying on the recording, his voice cracking with emotion. "He said it was for the cause of keeping America pure, white. He gave me specific instructions. Target Sarah Johnson's silver Honda Civic, license plate 3B7J9 Kelvin. Hit them at exactly 8:47 a.m. during the school run when they'd be at the intersection of Maple and 3rd. He had their entire routine mapped out, 3 months of surveillance. He knew which route she took, which lane she preferred, how she always let other cars go first because she was polite like that." The recording continued, each word a nail in Richard Sterling's coffin. He said to make sure there were no survivors. Dead. RS can't testify. Those were his exact words. I was high on cocaine he'd given me to make the drunk driving story more believable. He had a doctor on standby to alter my blood test results. The whole thing was planned. Every detail. Sterling Jr. Sobs grew heavier on the recording. I can still see their faces. Every night, every single night for 10 years. The little girl, Lily, she was wearing a pink dress with butterflies on it. She was smiling and waving at other cars. The boy, James, had a toy car in his hand, a red Lightning McQueen. He was making zoom sounds with his mouth. Their mother was singing along to some Disney song on the radio. They were happy. They were so happy. And then I destroyed them. I've wanted to confess for years, the recording continued. But my father said he'd kill me if I did. He has people everywhere. Judges, police, politicians. He owns them all. But I can't live with this anymore. I see them when I close my eyes. I see them when I'm awake. The little girl asks me why I hurt her family. The boy just cries. The mother stares at me with these eyes full of sadness. Not even anger, just infinite sadness. The parade of luxury vehicles that began arriving then was like something out of a movie. Rolls-Royces, Bentleys, Bugattis, McLarens, dozens of them, creating a semicircle around the scene. The doors opened to reveal some of the most powerful people in the automotive industry. Akio Toyoda, CEO of Toyota, stepped out of a white Century and walked directly to Marcus, bowing deeply in the Japanese tradition of showing ultimate respect. "Dr. Johnson," he said, loud enough for everyone to hear, "your genius saved our company. The LJ Memorial Hybrid System has prevented millions of tons of carbon emissions. You've literally helped save the planet." Elon Musk bounded over with characteristic energy, ignoring the FBI agents trying to maintain a perimeter. "Marcus, brother, we've been searching everywhere for you." He turned to the crowd, never one to miss an opportunity for attention. This man, this genius, saved Tesla from bankruptcy. His motor design is in every Tesla on the road today. We owe him everything. The CEOs of Ferrari, Mercedes, Porsche, Lamborghini, BMW, Audi, all of them had come. Each one had a story about how Marcus's anonymous patents had revolutionized their companies. The crowd was recording everything, the story evolving in real time from a racial incident to something far bigger, far more complex. Dr. Johnson's patents have generated over $50 billion in revenue industry-wide, Toyota explained to the stunned crowd. We've been trying to find him for years to pay him his share. The initial payment of $4.8 billion has grown to $15 billion with interest and royalties. It's been sitting in escrow, waiting for him. Elena Rodriguez took control of the scene with practiced efficiency. "Richard Sterling, you're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, racketeering, obstruction of justice, witness tampering, tax evasion, money laundering, and 47 other federal crimes." She pulled out a second tablet, reading from it. "Your son's confession implicates you in the murders of 47 black families over the past 20 years. The Johnson family was just one of many. We have evidence of a systematic campaign to eliminate successful black professionals who you saw as threats to white supremacy." As the FBI agents moved to arrest him, Richard began to babble desperately. "You set me up. This is entrapment. I have rights. I have money, $40 billion. I can pay. I can bring them back. The best doctors, cloning technology, resurrection science. Please." He was crawling on his hands and knees now, his expensive suit tearing on the asphalt. "I'll give you everything, every penny. Just let me go. I have connections. I know things about senators, presidents. I can give you names." Marcus raised his hand, and remarkably, everyone fell silent. The crowd, the FBI agents, even the helicopters seemed to quiet their rotors. "Elena, give me 15 minutes with him." 10 years of silence, I need to say this. Elena considered for a moment, then nodded. "You've earned it. 15 minutes. Marcus sat down on the scorching asphalt, right in the middle of Rodeo Drive, his legs crossed like he was about to meditate. The contrast was striking. The homeless-looking man sitting with perfect composure, while the billionaire in the torn designer suit knelt in handcuffs. 20,000 people had now surrounded them in a vast circle, with millions more watching online. The live stream had reached 50 million viewers worldwide and climbing. "You called me inferior because my skin is black," Marcus began, his voice calm but carrying an edge that could cut diamond. "But let's examine that claim scientifically. Since you're so fond of quoting bell curves and statistics, what makes someone superior, Richard? Is it intelligence? My IQ is 187, tested and confirmed by MIT when I was 16. Yours, according to your Harvard application which my hackers obtained, is 109. Barely above average, and that's probably inflated. Is superiority about innovation? I've created 1,247 patents that have revolutionized transportation globally. You've created nothing except schemes to steal from others. Is it about education? I have 3 PhDs that I earned while homeless: mechanical engineering, quantum physics, and computer science. I attended the lectures in disguise, took the exams under pseudonyms, aced every one. You bought your MBA with a building dedication. Perhaps superiority is about wealth? You inherited $40 billion built on slavery, exploitation, and murder. I earned $15 billion while living in alleys and eating from dumpsters, using public library computers and borrowed phones. Which achievement is more impressive? Or maybe superiority is about family? You have 4 ex-wives who hate you, 7 children who won't speak to you, and a son who's a murderer and drug addict. I had 1 wife who loved me with every atom of her being, 2 children who thought I was a superhero. They're gone, but their love still sustains me every day. Who's richer in what actually matters? Richard tried to interrupt. You don't understand. It's about breeding, genetics, evolution. Marcus laughed, but there was no humor in it. Genetics? Let's talk genetics. Did you know that there's more genetic diversity within Africa than in the rest of the world combined? That the concept of race has no biological basis? It's a social construct created to justify exploitation. But you know what is genetic? Psychopathy, the inability to feel empathy. Studies show it runs in families, particularly families that have maintained wealth through generations of exploitation. Your grandfather was a psychopath. Your father was a psychopath. You're a psychopath. Your son is trying not to be, which is why the guilt is killing him. You want to talk about evolution? Evolution favors cooperation, not domination. The most successful species are those that work together. Humans survived because we developed empathy, compassion, the ability to care for those who couldn't care for themselves. What you represent: selfishness, cruelty, the hoarding of resources that's actually maladaptive. You're an evolutionary dead end, Richard. Your ideology is a cancer that society's immune system is finally rejecting. But here's what you really don't understand, Marcus continued, his voice growing softer but somehow more intense. Power isn't about subjugation. Real power is about lifting others up. For 10 years, while living as a worthless homeless man, I've been using my patents to fund thousands of scholarships for Black students, building homeless shelters that don't just warehouse people but actually help them recover and thrive, creating job training programs that have lifted entire communities out of poverty, all anonymously, all while you thought I was broken and defeated. Every night, I could have had you killed. Did you know that? The homeless network I built includes veterans, former special forces, people with very particular skills who owe me their lives. They've been watching you, your family, your associates. One word from me and you would have simply disappeared. But I didn't. Do you know why? Richard was shaking now. Whether from fear or rage was unclear. Why? He whispered. Because Sarah wouldn't want that. She believed in justice, not vengeance. Lily believed everyone had good in them, even monsters like you. James was too young to understand hate, and I wanted to honor that innocence. So instead of killing you, I documented you. Every crime, every confession, every moment of evil. Not for revenge, but for justice. To show the world what happens when wealth and prejudice combine with power. You created me, Richard. Your cruelty forged me into something you never expected. Patient, brilliant, and untouchable. Every insult made me stronger. Every injustice made me smarter. Every night crying for my family made me more determined. You thought you were destroying me, but you were actually creating your own destroyer. Your son will face execution for his crimes. You'll die in prison, alone and forgotten. The Sterling name will become synonymous with evil, taught in history classes as an example of how hatred ultimately destroys itself. Your fortune will be dissolved, every penny going to the communities you terrorized. Sterling Industries will become the Johnson Foundation, dedicated to everything you tried to prevent Black excellence, equality, justice. But here's the part that will really haunt you. Marcus leaned forward slightly. I forgive you. Richard's head snapped up in shock. What? I forgive you, Richard. Not for your sake, but for mine. For Sarah, who believed in redemption even for the irredeemable. For Lily, who thought everyone had good in them somewhere, even if it was buried under mountains of evil. For James, who was too young to understand that some people choose to be monsters. I forgive you because holding on to rage would make me like you, and that would be the ultimate victory for everything you represent. But forgiveness doesn't mean escaping consequences. Justice delayed is not justice denied. Today, after 10 long years, justice arrives not with vengeance but with truth. And truth, Richard, is the one thing your money could never buy, your power couldn't suppress, your hatred couldn't destroy. Marcus stood up slowly, his joints protesting from sitting on the hot asphalt. He looked down at Richard, who was sobbing now, whether from fear, rage, or the first stirrings of genuine remorse was impossible to tell. Your son, in his confession, showed more humanity than you ever have. He's broken by guilt. That breakage might save him, might make him human again. But you're not broken. You're exactly what you always were, empty, a void where a soul should be, and now everyone can see it. The crowd remained silent for a full minute after Marcus finished speaking. Then, slowly, starting from the back and moving forward like a wave, people began to applaud. The applause became cheers. The cheers became a roar that could be heard for miles. People were crying, hugging strangers, shouting justice in a dozen languages. Richard Sterling broke completely. He fell forward, his face hitting the asphalt, sobbing incoherently. I'm sorry, he repeated, but the words were empty. The repentance of a man who was sorry he'd been caught, not sorry for what he'd done. His carefully styled hair was disheveled, his expensive suit torn and dirty, his watch cracked from impact with the ground. He looked like what he'd always been inside, small, pathetic, and utterly defeated. Elena Rodriguez stepped forward, helping Richard to his feet with professional detachment. Richard Sterling, you have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. As she continued reading his rights, more FBI agents moved in to process the arrest. Captain Hayes and the officers who had drawn their weapons on Marcus were also arrested, their corruption finally exposed. Officer Rodriguez and Officer Washington, who had tried to speak up, were commended and would later receive promotions and become symbols of integrity in law enforcement. Within hours, the video had become the most watched live stream in human history. 2 billion views in 24 hours, surpassing every previous record. The story was translated into every language on Earth, from Mandarin to Swahili, from Arabic to Inuit. Protests erupted in 500 cities demanding justice reform, not riots, but peaceful demonstrations of people who had been inspired by Marcus's patience and dignity. The United Nations called an emergency session on systemic racism. Religious leaders from every faith issued statements. The Pope called it a moment of divine justice. The Dalai Lama spoke of karma manifesting in its purest form. The President addressed the nation, calling it America's moment of reckoning with its original sin. Sterling Industries lost 99.9% of its value in 3 hours, the fastest and most complete corporate collapse in history. 12,000 employees resigned on the same day, not wanting to be associated with the Sterling name. Every partner, every client, every associate severed ties immediately, many issuing public statements distancing themselves. Banks froze all Sterling accounts globally. Properties were vandalized with graffiti reading "Murderer" and "Justice for the Johnsons" and "Black Lives Matter." Sterling Jr. was extradited from Switzerland within 6 hours, the Swiss government expediting the process in an unprecedented move, not wanting to be seen as harboring a racist murderer. The arrests came in waves, coordinated across all 50 states simultaneously. 1,200 members of Sterling's white supremacist network were arrested in what the FBI called Operation Justice Dawn. 47 judges, including 2 federal appeals court judges and 1 state Supreme Court justice, 89 senators and representatives, their careers ending in handcuffs on live television, 234 CEOs, many of them household names who'd hidden their prejudice behind corporate speak, 15 police chiefs, 2 governors, 5 mayors all taken into custody in the largest RICO case in world history. The media called it the day racism died, though Marcus would later correct them in an interview. Racism didn't die that day. We just cut out one of its tumors. The patient America still needs extensive treatment. The trial was broadcast live globally. with 3 billion people watching the most-watched legal proceeding in human history. Marcus testified for 30 straight hours without a break, never wavering, never contradicting himself. He played recordings of Sterling laughing about the murders, calling his victims roadkill and natural selection at work. Videos of Sterling Jr. practicing his ramming technique on abandoned cars, with his father coaching him on angle and speed for maximum fatality. Documents showing the systematic targeting of successful black families, doctors, lawyers, engineers, business owners, anyone who challenged the narrative of white superiority. The evidence was so overwhelming that Sterling's legal team, the best money could buy, essentially gave up. They tried to argue insanity, but psychiatric evaluations showed Sterling was completely sane, just evil. They tried to argue entrapment, but the evidence predated any FBI involvement. They tried to argue for mercy, but how do you ask for mercy for someone who showed none? The jury, 6 black, 3 Latino, 2 Asian, 1 white, carefully selected to represent America's diversity, deliberated for 8 minutes. They later said they only took that long because they wanted to be thorough in reviewing the jury instructions. Guilty on all charges. 147 federal crimes, each carrying significant sentences. Sterling Jr. was sentenced to death by lethal injection, the jury finding that his crimes were especially heinous because they targeted children. Richard Sterling received 10 consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole, to be served in solitary confinement. His cell would have photographs of all his victims on every wall, not just the Johnsons, but all 47 families. Audio of children's laughter would play 24 hours a day at a volume just loud enough to be always heard, but never loud enough to drown out thought. He would be forced to watch videos of the families he'd destroyed during every waking hour, seeing their lives, their hopes, their dreams, their final moments. 6 months later, Sterling Jr. was executed. His last words were, "I'm sorry, Lily. I'm sorry, James. I'm sorry, Mrs. Sarah. I see you every night. I know sorry isn't enough. Nothing will ever be enough. Tell them I'm sorry." He'd spent his final months writing letters to the families of victims, not asking for forgiveness but simply acknowledging what he'd done. Marcus attended the execution and, in the final moments, told Sterling Jr. that he forgave him. The young man died with tears streaming down his face, the first peace he'd known in a decade. Richard Sterling, watching on a monitor from his cell because he wasn't allowed to attend in person, suffered a massive heart attack and died 10 minutes after his son. The guards found him clutching his chest, his final words reportedly being, "They're here. They're all here." Whether he meant his victims or something else, no one knew. They were buried in unmarked graves in a potter's field, no funeral, no mourners, no legacy but shame. Even the grave diggers didn't want to be associated with the task, so it was done by volunteers from the black community who saw it as closing a chapter of evil. The Johnson Foundation was established with $67 billion Sterling's seized assets, plus Marcus's patents, plus donations that poured in from around the world. Within a year, it had provided free education to 10 million black children, built 1,000 Sarah Johnson hospitals offering free health care in underserved communities, established 10,000 Lily Johnson libraries worldwide, each one containing a section dedicated to black history and achievement, created 5,000 James Johnson STEM centers where children could learn engineering, coding, and robotics for free. Each location featured a portrait of the Johnson family and their story, ensuring they would never be forgotten. Marcus returned to the graves of his family 1 year after Sterling's death. He was clean-shaven, healthy, wearing a simple but neat suit that Sarah would have liked. The cemetery was beautiful in the spring morning light, birds singing in the trees, flowers blooming everywhere. He placed 28 white roses for Sarah, one for each year she'd lived. For Lily, he brought an Elsa doll wearing the crown she'd always wanted, the one they'd planned to buy for her 6th birthday. For James, he'd brought 500 Hot Wheels cars, carefully arranging them in perfect lines the way his son used to do on Saturday mornings while Marcus drank coffee and Sarah made breakfast. "We did it," he said quietly, his voice carrying on the morning breeze. "They paid. Justice came. You can rest now." For the first time in 11 years, Marcus smiled a real, peaceful smile that reached his eyes. Daddy completed the mission. The world knows your names. Your love lives on in millions of children who will grow up in a better world because of what we survived, what we endured, what we overcame. The Johnson Memorial Park in Detroit spans 5,000 acres, the largest urban park in America, free and open to all forever. At its heart stands a 50-foot statue of the family embracing, Marcus lifting James in the air while Sarah holds Lily's hand. The inscription reads, "Love defeated hate, justice prevailed. Hope lives on, in memory of all families destroyed by hatred. May their light forever shine in the darkness." 10 million people visited in the first year alone. Lily's rainbow garden blooms with 100,000 roses of every color, tended by volunteers who see it as an honor. James's racing track lets children race bicycles for free, their laughter echoing across the grounds in a sound that would have made him giggle with delight. Sarah's Healing Center provides free therapy to those dealing with trauma and loss, helping thousands find peace each year. Marcus eventually remarried Elena Rodriguez, the prosecutor who'd helped bring justice to his family. She'd fallen in love with his strength, his patience, his refusal to let hatred corrupt him. They adopted 2 orphans, a 5-year-old girl and a 3-year-old boy whose parents had been killed by a drunk driver, naming them Sarah and James in honor of the angels watching over them. He taught at MIT for free, refusing all payment, saying knowledge should be shared, not sold. He fixed cars for single mothers on weekends, often leaving money hidden in the glove compartments. Despite having billions at his disposal, he lived simply in a modest home, driving a regular Toyota Camry, finding joy in small things, a good cup of coffee, a child's laughter, a sunset. The impact was global and lasting. Hate crimes dropped 90% within 5 years. Black enrollment in STEM fields increased by 1,000%. The wealth gap closed by 50% in a decade. Police killings dropped by 98%. The first black female president was elected in 2028, citing the Johnson family as her inspiration. The Marcus Johnson law made hate crimes carry a mandatory life sentence without parole. The story became required teaching in schools worldwide, translated into every language, adapted into books, films, and plays, ensuring that future generations would know what happened when love confronted hate. At 90 years old, Marcus gave his final public speech at Harvard. The auditorium was packed, with millions more watching online. He was still sharp, still brilliant, his voice still strong despite his age. "Pain either destroys or transforms," he said, looking out at the sea of young faces, all colors, all backgrounds, all united in their attention. "I chose transformation through patience. Not revenge that would have dishonored them, but justice that honors them eternally." Sarah lives in every healed heart, in every act of kindness, in every moment we choose love over hate. Lily laughs in every scholarship awarded, in every child who learns that their skin color doesn't determine their worth. James plays in every child's smile, in every moment of innocent joy that we protect and preserve. "They never died," he continued, his voice growing stronger. "They multiplied. They became immortal not through tragedy, but through the triumph that rose from it." Every black child who becomes a doctor carries Sarah's healing spirit. Every young genius who invents something wonderful carries Lily's curiosity. Every child who plays with abandon, free from fear, carries James's joy. The Sterlings of this world want you to believe that hatred is stronger than love. They're wrong. Hatred is loud, but love is lasting. Hatred breaks, but love builds. Hatred takes, but love gives. And in the end, love always wins. Not because it's easy, but because it's right. Not because it's painless, but because it's powerful. The standing ovation lasted 45 minutes. People wept openly, strangers hugged, and for a moment, the world seemed united in understanding that justice, though sometimes delayed, is never truly denied when good people refuse to give up. You've just read a story about unimaginable loss transformed into unstoppable justice. Marcus Johnson lost everything in a single morning: his beautiful wife, his precious daughter, his baby boy. He lived as a homeless man for 10 years, called every slur, treated as less than human. But every insult was a brick in the foundation of justice. Every tear watered the seeds of change. In your life, you'll meet Richard Sterlings, people who believe money and skin color determine human worth. Don't stay silent. Don't turn away. A video recorded at the right time, words spoken at the right moment, one small action can change the world. Ashley Kim just pressed live and sparked a revolution. Share this story now, not just because it moves you, but because it's necessary. In an age of rising hatred, we must remind each other, love wins always. Tag someone who needs this. someone in pain, someone waiting for justice, someone thinking of giving up. Tell them, justice may be delayed but never denied. Hold on. Lily at 5 and James at 3 didn't die in vain. They live on through every act of justice, every word against discrimination, every helping hand extended. Don't wait 10 years. Start today, right now. Justice begins with you.